What is up, YouTube guys? Jericho426 coming at you with another Marvel Contest of Champions video, and this is our last Marvel Contest of Champions video of 2021. What a year, guys. This has been my very first year on YouTube, and especially with Contest of Champions, and it has been amazing, guys, and I thank you guys so much. So what we are getting into today, guys, let's kind of backtrack to about the middle of the year. There have been a lot of YouTubers that work with MCoC that have tier list of champions. But the mecca of all of them, the OG, was Mr. Seaton himself, right? Man of Legends. But he decided not to do his tier list anymore. And he had a variety of reasons. But this kind of left a big hole. And so there have been some other YouTubers that have come out with tier lists since then. And in my opinion, they were very biased on, you could kind of tell that it was just who the YouTuber really liked to play with, where Seaton's tier list was really good is it seemed very unbiased. It seemed like this is just clear cut based on the attributes and the abilities within the game. This is where champions will fall within a tier list, and I appreciated that. And so there have been some other attempts at tier lists. I didn't like most of them. Now, Karate Mike did just come out with, it wasn't really a tier list. He kind of referred to it as a tier list, but it wasn't really a tier list. It was more of an individual rating of every champ on like multiple different aspects within the game. It's actually a really in-depth and really cool list to look at, so you guys should check out Karate Mike for that if you haven't seen it. But it doesn't really give a, I'm hitting mics here, guys. It doesn't really give just a broad tier list, okay? Now, if you are familiar with Seaton's tier list, it had a lot of categories. It was, I don't know, 7, 8, maybe even 9 categories, right? For where champions would fall. I didn't want to do that because I found that it becomes a little bit too confusing, okay? So the point of this tier list of mine is to be as least confusing as possible, but also to give you an idea of, let's say you have 2 different champions and you're trying to consider which one to rank up. This is going to give you a better idea of who to rank up first, and potentially why you would rank them up, and what it takes to make them a good champion. Okay, so I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. It could get a little bit more complicated later on. I've actually thought about, you can see here, we have basically 6 categories in which a champion could fall. From trash, all the way at the bottom, rarely useful, sometimes useful, good, exceptionally good, and god tier. Now, I've thought about maybe adding in one more tier between good and exceptionally good, like a good and a very good and then exceptionally good, but I haven't gotten there yet, and we'll have to see how everything kind of falls in place as we do this. Now, let me just say, I had never really intended to do a tier list, but I had several requests for one since I do the champion guide. So this is my first attempt at a tier list, but let me just say, guys, it's my opinion, but it's my opinion based on the attributes within the game, okay? This is not necessarily my opinion based on whether I really like to play the champion or not. I like to play all the champions at some capacity. I like to play with everybody. But let me say, if you disagree, if you absolutely disagree with my assessment, that's okay. That's okay. You know, if I rate a champion really low that you really love, that's okay, because my tier list doesn't affect your gameplay, guys. But I will say, instead of just, you know, shouting out in the comments and be like, oh, you're so wrong, you know, blah, 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 prove me wrong, okay? If you guys see one of my ratings, whether it's too high or too low, and you say that I'm wrong about that, send me gameplay. Send me gameplay to my email or to my iCloud or to Google Drive, whatever. Send me gameplay to prove me wrong about where my ranking is on this tier list, and we'll look at it, and I will absolutely make a correction if I need to, guys. I am all about doing this as a community. In fact, we might even do more polls as a community to decide where some champions should fall. Big preamble out of the way. I will one more thing say, this is going to be just for the new champions of 2021. I'm going to build this tier list over the next several months, okay? We're going to add in the older champions as well. I know you might think it's a little weird to start with the newer ones and then work back, but since this is my first year on YouTube and I've done more with the newer champions, these are the ones that I'm more familiar with overall. Next month, we're actually going to do the buff champions for 2021, and then we'll start going back and look at the older champions as well. Okay? So, guys, with all of that being said, let's get into Jericho426's MCoC champion tier list for the very end of 2021. So I have the champions listed from top to bottom in the order that they were released. However, I am not going to review them in the order in which they were released. I'm actually going to review them in an order of hierarchy for their class. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to start with Cosmic, and then we're going to work our way through Tech, Mutant, everybody else, okay? So, let's start, top of the list up here, looking at our Cosmic champion, Super Skrull. Super Skrull was not really treated very well whenever this game was released, or whenever he was released in the game, I should say. Super Skrull is a very powerful opponent to the Fantastic Four, and among all the Skrulls, he is the most powerful Skrull. But unfortunately, he doesn't really pack a punch whenever he comes into the game. He's got a lot of interesting rotations and abilities, you know, forming armor up buffs, converting them into the Fury buffs. But unfortunately, even when his Fury buffs are at max and he can go unblockable, and he also gets the those flaming fists of his, he just doesn't really hit that hard. And at the end of the day, there's just every other Cosmic champion in the world that does more damage than him. He has some great animations, and he's got a little bit of utility. I feel like they really dropped the ball in his synergies as well. Basically, all he can do is he can replace a member of the Fantastic Four within the Fantastic Four synergies. It's very, I mean, I like that, I guess, but to be that that's really all of his synergies, it's kind of lame to me. I feel like they should have given some kind of extra oomph in his synergies there with the Fantastic Four, or at least when they are with him. Because of his very lackluster damage and really just not a whole lot of utility, we are going to take Mr. Super Skrull here, and he is going to go into the rarely useful category. Bottom of the barrel, unfortunately. Well, not completely bottom. He's not trash. And this isn't to say he is useless. It's just to say that when you're looking at your roster to try to complete quests or anything, you're probably not going to choose him first or even second. He's going to be, oh, well, this is really low-level content, and I could use anybody, so why not use him? So he is going to rate, unfortunately, in rarely useful. Now, we're going to go from Super Skrull to almost the exact opposite of the spectrum, Odin. Okay, guys? So, looking at Odin here, when Odin was released, he was not terrible, but he had that big glaring flaw of the Odin sleep, in which case, after a fight, he was pretty much useless until 2 fights later, right? So you had to skip a fight, let somebody else fight, and then Odin came back in. Now, he still loses some of his ability during this Odin sleep period. What I don't like is, though, that if you hit that first Odin sleep, and you've got all your buffs that come with the Odin sleep, and then if you keep on using Odin, you never get that back unless you skip a fight with him. I don't like that aspect of him. However, I will say, if you've seen some of my testing video where we're looking at his damage, it doesn't take away a whole lot of Odin's damage in order, if he doesn't have those Odin sleep buffs. So it definitely does take away damage, but not a terrible amount. And the fact of the matter is, Odin hits like a freaking Mack truck. Once he is ramped up, and his ramp up does take a little bit, depending on the length of the fight. I don't always go for the special 3. A lot of times I just gain all my buffs going up to the special 2. So, you know, we'll heavy, 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 and then heavy going into the special 1, and then go up to my special 2. At that point, he's still hitting pretty hard. But even if you're doing a long rotation with it, again, you're talking about 20 to 30% of the opponent's max health just right off the top. And sustaining that damage is very easy. Once he's ramped up, he's there. And as long as you're staying close to the opponent, you can just keep on ticking off 20, 30% of max health over and over again. Overall, Odin is a monster in this game. And I think he is absolutely one of the best cosmic champions in the game and one of the best champions in the game. And because of that, guys, Odin is going to rank himself a god tier on the list. Absolutely god tier. He is just a monster of a champion, and I really love him. He was originally going to be my first rank 3 6-star, but as you all know, if you've been watching the channel, I went with Cosmic Ghost Rider because Cosmic Ghost Rider is kind of my bae. So, going from that Cosmic Champion down to the next one. And this one doesn't need a whole lot of explanation, guys. It's Hercules. And we all know pretty much, I don't even have to say it, okay? Hercules is automatically going to go over into God tier champion. So Hercules was the summoner's choice. We chose Hercules to be our champion. And Kabam did not disappoint us with what they did with Hercules. He is a fantastic champion. He had to grow on me a little bit personally, but now, oh my gosh, I should have recorded. I was in a fight the other day and went from 1%, hit my immortality buff, and then gained all the way back to 20% just from my willpower. And I did this and finished the fight off and still won and had like 20% health left. I love Hercules. And he is just amazing. He is much, 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 much better awakened. If you really want the best out of Hercules, absolutely have him awakened, have him at a high sig level in order to get that immortality buff to last longer, although it doesn't have to be at the highest sig level as long as it's there. But yeah, Hercules is so versatile in how he's played. If you need buffs, use your special attacks. If you don't need buffs, don't use your special attacks, guys. You know, he's got crits for days. He is just an amazing champion, and I absolutely love him. So Hercules, absolutely a God tier champion. Now, the next champion on the list in our Cosmic slot is Knull, or Null, I guess if you're supposed to pronounce it that way. So Null is, he's an interesting champion. And, you know, I don't think we've fully found all of his potential yet, but I will say in fights where you have to just completely decimate people's armor who have a lot of armor ups, such as Colossus or Infinity War Iron Man, Null is just a beast when it comes to this. He can just, because he doesn't armor break, he literally just takes those armor ups away and turns them into his own abilities, his own debuffs. So Null is really an amazing champion when it comes to breaking down armor. He does have some fairly good damage, but it's not the peak of damage in Contest of Champions. Now, I will say though, for long fights, he has very sustainable damage over time. And once he's really ramped up, you can pretty much keep him at that level for the rest of the fight. So very good champion, has a lot of potential that I don't think we have yet to see. But based on what we know now about Null, I absolutely think Null deserves the exceptionally good slot. He is a very good champion. As we can see, they did not... let me take this guy off here. Except for Super Scroll here, they did not disappoint us with most of the Cosmic Champions so far. A lot of them are doing very well. Speaking of Cosmic Champions, let's look at the next two on the list. We have Cersei and Icarus. And I'm not going to review these guys together, obviously, but they did come out in the same month. So let's look at Cersei. I think Cersei is a good champion. She does not have, and this is the same issue with Icarus, they don't have a whole lot of utility. There's not any real immunities that they are firing off with, which makes them a little limited in content. And again, one of the ways that I'm really assessing all of these champions, guys, is not just the damage they can put out. Okay, we know that we want good damage. That's just kind of an expected, right? We want a champion to have good damage. But if the champion cannot survive in high-level content, I'm about to face up against the Grandmaster right now for my first time going for Thronebreaker. If they can't survive in Act 6, Act 7, what's their real use or utility? Again, we're looking at variant content, Act 6, Act 7, and, Cavalier Side Quest, which, from what we saw this last month, it was kind of tough. So, depending on your roster, I should say, it was kind of tough. So, where do these guys have a place? So, overall, I think Cersei is a good champion. She does a lot of good damage. She has some new gameplay mechanics based on her distancing, which is really cool. And the fact of the matter is she could go unblockable from almost anywhere on the screen, which is pretty cool. So I really like Cersei, but again, she is lacking a little bit in that utility department. Because of this, I think Cersei is absolutely a good champion. She is a solid champion, and I don't really find, I wouldn't necessarily hesitate to take her into a fight if there weren't like a whole bunch of crazy nodes on it. So Cersei, and absolutely, she's a good champion. And I think the same can be said for Icarus. I do think as well Icarus is a solid, good champion. Again, I think we have not really touched all of the potential that this champion has. it didn't seem like, I know for me, I wasn't as interested in acquiring these champions. I don't know how other people felt about it. I can tell you that the movie was very lackluster, and because of that, we just weren't into Icarus and Cersei that much. It did not seem. Icarus has a little bit of an odd ramp up. It's kind of a stressful ramp up, in my opinion, to get to his special 3. However, he can get to that special 3 very quickly. And I know there's some new gameplay ideas and rotations coming out about the best ways to play Icarus. Overall, though, he does have very, very high special 3 damage, some of the highest in the game if done properly. So I think time will tell more about Icarus. He may actually change positions on this list. Could go up, could go down. But I think right now, where we are assessing him, I think Icarus is a solid, good champion. All right, so let's move on to our tech champions. And the first one on the list is one of the most disappointing and most confusing champions to me in the entire game this year was Psychoman. And not confusing in his gameplay style, but confusing in the fact of why in the world did they choose Psychoman as a champion? Out of every champion that people have been asking for or longing for, Psychoman was definitely not one of them on anybody's list, I don't think. And I know that with MCoC, they try to touch on some champions that maybe aren't mainstream enough, and that's fine. But Psychoman just seemed like such a weird choice. I remember when they announced him, I was like, really? This guy? But again, he seemed like he had a lot of utility, and Psychoman does have a lot of utility. It's just his damage is completely not there at all. He is probably even weaker in some aspects than Super Skrull when it comes to his overall damage. He had some interesting ideas with these utilities. He can really control the power and the fight overall. I don't really like his special lock because the opponent still gains power, so you can special lock them, but once they hit a special 3, once that special lock is over, they can absolutely use it. So he really needs some kind of a power drain mechanic along with that special lock, I do think. But overall, no matter what his utility is, which can be useful in some situations, I don't think that he just has the damage to really sustain him in any kind of a fight. And honestly, I would never pick him in a fight for almost anything. And because of that, for right now, hopefully this guy will get a buff at some point in the future, but we are going to rate Psychoman as a rarely useful. Very unfortunate, but it is what it is, guys. Hopefully he'll see a good buff in the future. All right, guys, so on to the next tech champion, and this one I kind of ate my words with. We are talking about Silver Centurion here, and when Silver Centurion came out, and I originally did a video assessing his ability breakdown, I gave him such a bad rating. I just, you know, I didn't have good feelings about it, reading his abilities. I really just thought he sounded like kind of a rehash of Infinity War Iron Man. And then I actually realized later on that that's really what Infinity War Iron Man should have been. Instead of Silver Centurion, they should have just really put his kit into Infinity War Iron Man, in my opinion. Silver Centurion is a fantastic champion, guys. I totally eat my words on that one. He's a fantastic champion. I don't find, even though you have to stay really close to the opponent, I don't find his gameplay stressful at all. And I think it's fantastic. He's a very fun champion. It gets a little stressful once you get into your lock on because you don't want to lose that. So you really got to stay up close to the opponent. But when you do, and once you have the lock on and you fire off that special 2, you put the extra plasma debuffs or passes if he's awakened on the opponent. And then you just go in ham with those medium ending combos. He really adds in a lot of damage. And then all you have to do is keep that lock on going with your special 1, and you're going to apply a heal block to the opponent. He is absolutely a fantastic champion when it comes to taking out opponents that heal a lot, especially mutant opponents like Wolverine. Dude, Silver Centurion is a beast, and I love him. And he doesn't have to be awakened in order to be good. It does add to it because it turns his debuffs into passives, which is great because they can't be purified. But overall, I really love Silver Centurion. He's a great champion. Because of that, but he's not quite God tier. He is an exceptionally good champion. I really love Silver Centurion, and I ate my words on that one. Speaking of exceptionally good or better champions, Penny Parker. Now, I will admit that right now I am a little bit pennied out because I have been trying my best to go for Spiderman 2099 or Nimrod or some of the other champions in the featured crystals, and I keep on pulling so many freaking Penny Parkers. I think she's like a either a 60 or an 80 right now, awakening for my 6-star Penny Parker, and I also have a 565 rank 2 or Sig 200 Penny Parker as well. I have so many Penny Parkers, they're coming out my ears. If I could give you one, if you wanted her, I'd give it to her. But so many Penny Parkers. Penny Parker, some people might disagree with me on this. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you where I rate her, and you can get mad or you can agree, and then I'm going to explain why. Penny Parker, I think, is a solid God tier champion. You fight me on this if you want to, but let's talk about Penny Parker, okay? First of all, she has her shield that she uses, right? Okay, forgive me for not remembering all the names of every freaking champion in the world and all their abilities. But she has her shield that comes up. While that shield is up, she takes 0 damage while blocking. 0! Which means if you're fighting some of the more high damage dealing opponents, when it comes to their special attacks, let's say like Apocalypse, she can tank that damage right into the shield, and it never hurts her. She even has the ability to increase the resistance on that, or the amount of that shielding she has to 150 instead of just the regular 100 if she uses a special 3. Okay? She has one of the tankiest special 2s in the game. I mean, it takes a little while to ramp up. I won't lie to you about that. And some people, that's been their biggest complaint with Penny, it's a little bit of a ramp up job. But once you do, when you hit that special 2, it is almost completely just obliterates every opponent, especially if you're coming in with 15 or more of her charges. It just completely obliterates the opponent, and then it applies all those to Incinerate, so she continues to do damage to them afterwards. I have an old video, I don't even know, you have to look through the playlist, but I have an old video of Penny just completely obliterating so many champions with her special 2. It is crazy. So she also has an auto block feature, right? So as long as her shield is up and she has those charges, the more charges she has, if you miss a block, she has a high probability of auto-blocking, which can really save you. It really saves me a lot, okay? She's got this. She is Incinerate and Poison immune, making her very good for different nodes within the game. And finally, guys, the absolute best thing about Penny Parker is that when she is awakened, she is the best, in my opinion, counter to Nick Fury, because she has basically what I'm going to call a heal burn. So you know that we have the power burn abilities, right? Where you burn the power from the opponent, but you also do damage to them. Penny heal blocks anytime the opponent hits a bar of power or gains a certain amount of health. She will heal block them and then apply damage to them. She heal burns them, guys. And in the case of Nick Fury, this makes it so that when he goes from the life model decoy Nick Fury to the real Nick Fury, he doesn't get any of that health. He literally just stops at 1% and then takes damage and dies. She is fantastic. She also does this. She heal blocks Mr. Sinister. She heal blocks Mephisto, who for some reason is also not Incinerate immune, which doesn't make any sense to me. But be that as it may, she can take some of the biggest healing champions in the game and just demolish them with her awakened ability. Now, for Penny Parker to be God tier, if she is not awakened, exceptionally good is where Penny falls. When she is awakened, God tier is absolutely where Penny Parker sits. She doesn't even have to be a high Sig level. She can just be Sig level 1. She will still burn the champion and heal block them. So, but it does make it a little bit easier when she is a higher Sig level because it takes less of their health to activate the heal block. So, Penny Parker, absolutely God tier champion, a wonderful champion. And yeah, I got to get over me just getting so many of her. I really do like the champion. She's great. Next on the list for our tech champions is Nimrod. Now, Nimrod is an interesting champion because I would say his where he ranks on the tier list could go one of two ways. It could be him versus every other champion in the game and then him versus mutant champions. So we're going to rate Nimrod based on him versus mutant champions. Nimrod is a very, very good champion to take into any fight against mutants. He has so many abilities that helps him to counteract all the mutants in the game. And he has the abilities to go unstoppable, unblockable. And he has power drain mechanics. He has all kinds of stuff that go into his kit. And because of this, Nimrod is absolutely going to rank in the exceptionally good category. Very good champion, a tech champion that if you do acquire him, I am still waiting to acquire him myself at a higher star level, you should absolutely consider taking up. All right, guys, so now we are going to go into our mutant class. And this is a class that is filled with very good champions. Very good champions. In fact, this might be one of the most stacked class, if not the most stacked class, of any class within the game. And they do better as teams. They do better when you have synergies of mutants together, but they don't have to be, and there are a lot of good champions. And so looking at our first one, Jubilee here. Jubilee is an interesting champion. She is not the easiest playstyle to get a handle on, just because of how she has to rotate with each hit through her different fireworks colors. But she does have a lot of utility that comes with those fireworks colors. Along with that, she has fairly reasonable damage. It's nothing that's game breaking, but it's not low either. Jubilee overall is not a bad champion. She is actually, I think, a solid good champion. I haven't played a whole lot extra with Jubilee. I want to get to use her a little bit more, but I have so many other champions that I'm ranking up. But she is a solid good champion, and I would definitely consider ranking her up. Not at the top of the mutant list, but definitely if you're going through and you're looking at good mutants, she is definitely good on that list. Next one, Strife. Strife is an amazing champion. He really should be awakened. He gets more of an Aegon-style gameplay when he is awakened. But he is an amazing champion, not only for himself, but because he also synergizes very well with Apocalypse and makes Apocalypse, if it's even possible, even more of a damage-dealing god mutant than he already is. So, Strife has just so many crazy abilities. He has the ability to stop unblockable attacks, not just special attacks, unblockable attacks whenever he applies a concussion to the opponent. He can go invisible and miss attacks. He has psychic shielding as well, and even has the ability to stop unstoppable attacks. Strife has a lot of utility, and when ramped up, a ton of damage. And because of all these attributes, Strife is going to go straight into a god tier champion list. He is a fantastic champion, definitely at the top of the list. I'm currently working on ranking him up higher, at least as far as my 5 stars go. I do not have a 6 star, but definitely worth ranking up when you're considering all the mutants in the roster. Speaking of mutants in the roster at the top of their game, we have Kitty Pryde. Now, Kitty Pryde divided the community quite a bit when she came out. Kitty Pryde, the community is so weird in what they like. They want a really powerful champion that's almost game-breaking, but not game-breaking. There's like this little tiny line, this little threshold where a champion is almost game-breaking and we love them, or game-breaking and we don't love them. And Kitty Pryde, I guess, kind of straddled that line and was maybe a little over. The community really found Kitty Pryde to be a game-breaking champion because she had the ability to eat damage like it was breakfast cereal. I have a video that shows she can take special 3 damage and not take any damage from it. Now, this is not an easy feat to pull off because so much of Kitty Pryde involves her being able to time, or you being able to time those dash ins and get her phasing ability going in order for you to tank special 3 damage. But if you are good with your timing, and if the AI plays along with you, Kitty Pryde is an unstoppable champion. I'm not the best at playing her, but she is absolutely an unstoppable champion, and she has insane amounts of damage. So not only does she have insane amounts of damage, but she can actually straight up just take damage and not take any damage from it. So because of this, and I know people are going to hate it because a lot of people don't like Kitty Pryde for how great she is, we're going to put Kitty Pryde in the god tier. Yep, another god tier mutant, guys. There are a ton of god tier and exceptionally good mutants in this game, and she ranks right up there at the top. So, coming in after that, we are going to look at our skill champions. The skill class was one that I had always thought was a little bit lackluster overall. The champions just didn't seem that remarkable to me in any way. However, I have changed my mind, and actually, I love playing with my skill champions now. I don't know why; they just seem like so much more fun. Maybe it's just because they seem more down to earth than some of the other champions. I don't know if that's the reason or not, but I love playing with the skill class. Jabari Panther is an interesting addition to the game, and I think that Jabari Panther, she has some really good potential. She has her cleanse mechanic, which is very powerful. She also can deal tons of bleeds. She has a little bit of a stressful playstyle because you have a very tiny window in order to gain that fury buff when going into your Panther's side, or whatever it is, the Panther mode, whatever she calls it, right? But she has the ability to really dish out some damage. I think the problem with Jabari Panther is something that I've talked about in a previous video recently, which is her gameplay style is stressful to the point that, or so hectic, I should say, and so based on small amounts of time, that it makes her a little bit more unusable in high-level content. Because high-level content's already stressful enough, and you usually have tons of nodes to worry about, and you're trying to juggle all those. And then to try to juggle her abilities and really maximize her potential with her Panther abilities and her bleeds and her critical bleeds, I think she just suffers from the point that it makes her gameplay style almost moot. It's like, well, this is a champion I could use, but it's not one that's really going to change those nodes up or my ability to interact with those nodes for the better. So, again, she's not a bad champion. I just think currently I don't think she has a really good place in the game. And because of that, we're going to put her in the good champion slot. She is a good champion, but the game is just not for her right now. Hopefully, we'll see some changes in the future and be able to see more out of Jabari Panther because, again, she does have a lot of uses. All right. Coming up on my next skill champion, my boy, who I had hunted for since he came out and whose movie I absolutely love, ShangChi, is just a remarkable champion. He has such a simple gameplay style that's so varied, and you can vary it on what you need. So much utility. I mean, from his cleanse passives to his ability to go unblockable, his ability to slow the opponent and stop unstoppables, and the ability to stun the opponent, and then to be able to do these things through a block to where, typically what I'll do is I'll get my cleanse passive, and then I'll get my slow passive, or my slow debuff, and then the opponent's usually blocking. So what do? I just go in, and I medium, light, medium, and I get my unblockable buff, and it'll eat right through the block. Or you can do it with a stun. You can stun them through their block. And then on top of that, ShangChi's special 2 damage is just remarkable. Remarkable with how much he can absolutely do this. Again, I recently played around with him in Realm of Legends and had a 100% health Wolverine Realm of Legends. And with him at 100 of his chi charges, it didn't even give me the final numbers on Wolverine because it had already killed him before the entire special 2 was over. So ShangChi, I should say, is absolutely a god tier champion if I've ever seen one. One of the best, in my opinion, overall champions in the entire game. Absolutely love ShangChi, and I'm really hoping maybe with the next ShangChi movie, hopefully we'll get another one that actually has the the actual 10 rings from the movie, the little gauntlets, that would be really cool, I think. But as he is right now in the game, fantastic. And then we go from ShangChi down to Kraven. Kraven is a letdown for me, personally. And part of this is exactly what I said about Jabari Panther. He doesn't have a great place in the contest right now. And that is because his gameplay style just doesn't really work with the game. It was a very good idea, the root mechanic, and a very interesting idea. And I like the traps. I like the root idea. The problem is when you're really trying to go in on somebody with Kraven after they get trapped, more often than not, you find that you have to back off and let that champion basically just wait out the rest of the trap. Because, unfortunately, he just starts pushing them towards a special 3. He has a suppression debuff, but this isn't enough. This just is not enough for when the opponent is trapped. And to be quite honest, Kraven really needs an innervate debuff to put on the opponent. He needs to be able to stop their power gain completely when they go trapped, at least for the first half of the trap. You know, I mean, it's an 8-second trap. I think it's right, 8 or 10 seconds. At this point, he needs at least the first half of it to be completely innervated, and the opponent can't gain any power. That would make him a much better champion. His bleeds are a little bit quick. Even his critical bleeds are a little bit quick. But overall, he's a very fun champion to play. He just has no place. You're not going to take him to high-level content. There is no reason to take him to high-level content because it's going to take you forever to finish the fight because you're going to have to keep on backing off of a champion. And that root mechanic, while cool, doesn't have a whole lot of place in the game other than just being a feature. It's really just kind of there. Because of that, guys, I'm going to put Kraven. I'm not going to be as harsh on him. I'm going to put him in the sometimes useful category. I think, again, he could be useful. I think that they just, again, they need to find a good mix of here's our champion's abilities, here's our quest nodes. They need to synergize in some way. They need to be able, you need to have champions that can counter nodes very specifically, in my opinion. All right, guys, so we are getting down to our last two classes, and we are going to be going into the science class. And first one on the list is Mr. Negative. Now, Mr. Negative is a very popular champion. He's a very good champion. In fact, out of all the guides, I think this is one of my more viewed guides. I think a lot of people have actually pulled this champion. I don't know if the RNG is just with everybody with Mr. Negative, but a lot of people have pulled this champion this year, and a lot of people like him. His gameplay is a little slightly confusing at first, but once you play around with him just a little bit, you'll get the handle on it, and he's a very, very good champion, and he just has so much degeneration damage that he can apply to opponents. He is a fantastic champion, and most opponents in the game are not degen immune. In fact, I can only think of like really one, being Spider-Ham, that really has great immunity towards degeneration. So a great champion, not a whole lot of counters to this champion. When you are fighting against him, he can inflict delirium, right? So if you're using him as a defender, he reverses controls and he can create this delirium effect. So Mr. Negative, a great champion, great to use, does not have to be awakened really to be the top of his game. So we are going to put him in the exceptionally good category. Mr. Negative is a great champion. Now, looking at the next champion in the science class, the Overseer. Again, this is one that the community, and myself included, didn't really see the benefit from when he first entered the game. He seemed like he had a lot of utility. He has a great ability to reduce ability accuracy in the game, but his damage just didn't seem like it was there. But the more people have played around with him, it turns out he actually can be a little bit of a tanky, tanky champion. And I think the Overseer is still underrated. I think that he still has a lot of potential. I think he still could use a buff too, though. I still think, even though his damage is definitely more so than we thought, I still think that he could use more in that department. So because of his abilities, but because he's just lacking a little bit on the damage front, I think we're going to put the Overseer as a solid good champion. He is definitely a good champion. He's not bad whatsoever, and he can really change the tide in some really interesting content. So if you haven't tried the Overseer out, definitely give him a try. Again, he's a really good champion. Speaking of really good champions that initially I didn't think were good, is Spider-Man 2099. When this champion initially came out, I really blasted Spider-Man 2099. And that was because his max damage rotation is very hectic to get through. And in trying to do that damage rotation, it just wasn't, it's one, not feasible if you don't have him awakened at a high sig, and two, it seemed very stressful. I didn't think he was all that useful. And then, though, I saw more gameplay and more people came out with gameplay, and they weren't going through that max damage rotation, but they were still going through damage rotations that had a lot of potential and a lot of good numbers to them, which is mostly gaining your special 2 and getting that wither debuff on there. So I really kind of ate my words with Spider-Man 2099 as well. I'll never be afraid to admit that I eat my words with champions on my initial assessments. Spider-Man 2099 is a very, very good champion. This is one of my sought-after champions right now. I'm really trying to get my hands on the Spider-Man 2099, which I did not think I would say earlier in the year. I don't think he's quite God tier. He is missing a few things in his kit. But the fact of the matter is, he doesn't have the ability to apply buffs, or to gain buffs, which is really cool. It makes him very good for certain nodes. and especially like the buffet node. So he is great in a lot of different content, a lot of high level content as we've seen lately. So definitely Spider-Man 2099 is up there among some of the best in the game. Speaking of the same thing, AntiVenom was at one time my most sought after champion of the year. I did pull a 6-star version of AntiVenom, and I really love this champion. Very interesting. He has lots of utility, but he's one of the few champions where you have to ramp up his utility. So you can apply, let's say, your slow debuff or your Spectre debuffs on the opponent, but they're not 100%. They're like 33%. And so you have to apply multiple of these on the opponent to really increase their real utility and their ability. It also gives you the ability, though, to apply multiple ones to the opponent as well. So you don't just have to do one Spectre debuff. You could do a Spectre, and you could do a slow, and you could do all these different debuffs together. Plus, he synergizes really well with Spider-Man 2099 and lets Spider-Man 2099 start the fight by placing it with a debuff on the opponent. AntiVenom is very good. His damage is very weird. So when you gain all of your debuffs on the opponent and then you go into your special 2, it's really RNG dependent. If you hit your crit, you're going to do a massive, I mean, I've seen 70% max health done on an opponent with one special 2 from AntiVenom. But again, it's very RNG dependent, because if you don't hit that crit, I've also seen as little as 10% done with that special 2. Now, after you use the special 2, you're then going to have your Fury buffs, which is going to ramp up your damage a whole lot. But then the problem is, once those Fury buffs are gone, you have to start all over in that damage rotation. So I don't think AntiVenom he's really good in short fights, really good in medium fights, not the best in super long fights. And that's because once that damage is gone, you have to start all over again. But he is a wonderful champion. He has a lot of immunities, and he has a lot of abilities within the game and utilities within the game, and he has a crazy amount of damage. So because of all that, we are going to rank him in the exceptionally good category. AntiVenom, definitely a fantastic science champion. Now, down to our last part of the list, the Mystic class. This was, in my opinion, a little bit of a lackluster class this year. We start with Mangog, and Mangog is so weird. Your entire gameplay style hinges around the fact that you have to take damage. So you have to use your special 1s and your 5-hit combos in order to gain your charges. And once you get to 10, you then blast off a special 2, which will make you unstoppable and unblockable. It will stun the opponent. You then hold your heavy attack button, which will gain you power. And then the opponent will usually charge right into you, and he'll hit you, and Mangog will retaliate with that heavy attack and do a pretty good amount of damage, I think. I mean, he does have the damage when it comes to that. But the fact that you have to take a hit, and the fact that unless you've really timed this really well and gotten your power in the right place, you're only going to manage to get off one of those special 2s. Sometimes you can get off 2 in a row. But honestly, if you can't finish off the opponent in 1 to 2 of those special 2s back to back, again, you're just going to be taking damage. Again, an interesting idea for a champion. I think he needed a little bit more of a regenerate from damage taken whenever he does his heavy hold and blast the opponent whenever they come in on him. But again, I've seen some gameplay that looks promising. So because of that, I'm not going to put Mangog bottom of the barrel. We're definitely going to put him in the sometimes useful. I think he could be of use because he does have that damage there. I think at some point they need to really look at upgrading his kit. So Scarlet Witch, the Sigil version, or as I like to call her, Sigil Witch, that we got from the Black ISO store, if you had the Sigil, is again another champion that is good, but kind of a double-edged sword, in my opinion. So with Scarlet Witch, she has the ability to place buffs on the opponent, and then when she well-timed blocks the opponent, she will absorb those buffs herself. The problem is that one of those buffs happens to be an unblockable buff, and this can cause a lot of issues for you. Now, you can still block an opponent when they have this unblockable buff and absorb it. The problem comes in is, let's say the opponent is at a special, and then they get an unblockable buff, and then they decide, I'm going to throw my special attack. Now you have an opponent that wouldn't normally have an unblockable special attack that has an unblockable special attack. And if they are some of the more annoying or multi-hit special attacks in the game that are ranged, this can cause a big problem for you. Now, Scarlet Witch Sigil does have a lot of damage when ramped up properly, and she's a very fun champion to play, very interesting, and very different than a lot of the other champions in the game. Very, very unique. Overall, I think she is a good champion. I really just wish that they would, honestly, maybe the word is nerf. Maybe they should nerf her, and have it, and have it to where she doesn't have that unblockable buff that comes up, because I think that is one thing that has cost me some life, or definitely some health before. Purgatory is a champion that, wow, really showed a lot of promise. She has, again, the ability to really gain power very quickly. She has some incinerate damage. She has immunities, and she can absorb the souls of other champions and gain benefits from them. And with synergies, that can make that even quicker and even better. But overall, Purgatory's damage is just very underwhelming. She has the ability to race back and forth or back to special 3s over and over and over again, which is really kind of cool. It almost is like an upgraded version of Hyperion. However, this special 3 damage just isn't there. I ran it the other day just to test her out again at a 6-star, and just to see, is that damage going to be any better right now? And it just really wasn't, which is unfortunate, because, again, I think she has a lot of promise. I know that a fellow viewer, Symbiotic Servant, sent me some gameplay over, and I'm going to play around with his version of how he plays with her. He said he thought it was pretty promising. So, but overall right now, I just don't see Purgatory being that useful in the overall game, and because of that, she is going to go into the sometimes useful slot. All right, guys, and so finally, we have a champion that I think is underrated in a lot of ways, but I understand people's dislike of her overall. And that is America Chavez, who I actually have finally said her name right. I used to call her American Chavez all the time. She's going to be in the new Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness movie, so that's kind of cool. Which makes sense, because she can open up dimensional portals, which is what she does in the game. She has a lot of utility, and even has the ability, against someone like Vision Arcus or Hyperion, she can completely reverse their power gain, so they never gain any power at all. In fact, it goes backwards and it'll drain them down to 0. That, among everything, is, I think, fantastic, and it gives her a little niche in the game. The problem with America Chavez is, like we've seen with some of these other champions, she just doesn't have as much damage as she should. Now, because of the amount of utility that she has, it doesn't make her on the lowest part of the list, but it doesn't give her as much of a viability option as some of the other champions. Still, this is one of my champions that I would like to acquire, just because I would like to play around with her more and really discover if there is something more we can do with her kit in order to make her a better champion. But for right now, I think that America Chavez belongs in the sometimes useful category. So guys, here is our tier list for December 31st of 2021 for the 2021 new champions. As I said, next month I will be looking at the buffed champions from 2021, and we will be adding them to the list. What do you think of this list, guy? Is there somebody that you think is too high or too low on this list? Let me know. But before, like I said, before you get all mad about it, if you think that somebody really deserves to be somewhere different, shoot some gameplay of it, send it over to me. I'll feature it on the channel, and we will discuss, maybe even as a live. Maybe we'll do a YouTube live and get everybody on here and say, where do you think this person should be, right? All right, guys. So I appreciate you sticking with me tonight, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with me this year and all the support this year. I truly appreciate everything from all of you guys. You have been wonderful. This is such a great community. Thank you so much for all the advice you have given me on my quest to defeat the Grandmaster. I really appreciate you guys so much. And as always, I will catch you on the flip side.